Hi, Eka. Welcome to Your Story Matters. Thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedule to speak to us. So, today we want to talk about career transitions and from the point of view of personal potential. So, as coaches, we work with high performers and leaders who come to a stage very often after about 20 years of exceptional working careers where they feel stuck and they don't know how to move forward. Questions that haunt them are: is this it? Have I reached my full potential? What else is there? There's often things like fatigue, etc., which also happens at this stage. So today I want to ask you that from your storehouse of wisdom, what are some of the tips that you can share with us in terms of how to deal with this situation and how to move on and move ahead in a re-energized way? Over to you.
I think you raise a very relevant issue, and you're right, Nandini. All of us, especially in our profession, we deal with this very often. Very often, what comes to us as possibly an issue with communications, or an issue with anger, or issue with team management, or issue with performance. And while all of these are very behavior, very manifested persona issues, the fact is, and we recognize this from our work, that all of them underlie some very deep rooted conflicts within ourselves. And I understand that the word conflicts is a very strong word to use, but really it is not accepting, or not being in resonance, or not being aligned at the same frequency as yourself, right? And just going back to our class 10th physics, where if you have two different frequencies that you're operating at, whenever at the point of interference, at the point of transition, whether it be your physical body or emotional body or intellectual body or spiritual body, whatever that point of interference is, there's bound to be friction if these frequencies that the desire that's coming from within and the external frequencies aren't aligned. And really the only way to deal with it, and that's what we do in our practice, is to make sure that they're aligned with each other, that there's harmony, there's for the lack of conflict, you come into your own when you are shining at your natural frequency. But you're right, very often, and while that's phase two of the journey, the first part of that journey is just recognizing that you are at odds with yourself. Just recognizing that you're not giving yourself the respect, the acknowledgement that your own emotions, desires, expressions deserve, right? And that actually, that's what I want to talk to you about today, about saying that how do you recognize these these little manifestations, these little red flags that allow you to know that you need to step up or step in, right? And I, as usual, I always go back to my ancient wisdom, because they provide a very useful framework for me to study. And there are actually just three principles around it, right? The first one is, what's the origin of fear, of panic, of anger, of conflict? There's a brilliant concept in the Bhagavad Gita of the concept of the kshetra. The kshetra is your, I mean, literally translated, it is territory, but as in most cases, you can't really accurately translate it. But the Bhagavad Gita speaks of the concept of the kshetra, which is your body, your territory. And then there's the concept of the kshetragya, which is a much far greater metaphysical construct um, of the larger powers around you. But the concept of the kshetra is that which you control.
Hmm.
In the West and in our management principles, we've studied this brilliantly as the circle of control and circle of concern, right? And why I find it very interesting is because every time that we express fear or anger or panic or irritation or hurt or offense or depression, any one of these conflicts are just the behavioral manifestations of being out of control. So whenever you're operating, it's a sense of helplessness.
Hmm.
And so whenever you're operating not from that which is within you, but expecting or being concerned about or trying to control something that's outside your span of control, outside your kshetra, that is the origin of all fear, all panic, and therefore all helplessness, which then gets manifested as anger, right? So go back to I'm just going back to our workplaces. I am angry or hurt or upset that my boss didn't give me a promotion. Circle of concern. Circle of control would be to bring it into saying, what did I do about it? Have I done my job? Have I communicated it? Are my expectations aligned? Or even in our most intimate relationships, the reason for all conflicts, even at home, is they didn't know, do what I expected them to do. They haven't done what they are supposed to do, right? That whole space, or my child is not studying well. You really have no control over your child studying, not studying or not studying well. So every time that we operate outside our circle of control and in our circle of concern, we are bound to feel the anger, the panic, the fear, the depression, the anger, the offense, all of it. So my first advice to most of us, and the reason that this becomes even more acute at a particular age, is because for the last 10 years, 20 years since you stepped into the workforce, you were on an automatic treadmill. The narrative was pretty much you were carrying on the momentum of your education, of your adolescence, what in Hindi we would call Josh Jawani. That you're just soldering on and bouldering on and will continue the battle. By this time, there is a natural pause that's happened. By this time, your first set of tick marks have been achieved. And now suddenly there is this space where you need to make a conscious choice. And so this conflict becomes more aggravated. In our
So,
most intimate relationships, this conflict becomes more aggravated. In our roles as parents, these conflicts become more aggravated. So I would urge our friends to actually watch for every time that they are angry, hurt, offended, sad, depressed, in fear, in panic, and isolate it. Because what it reflects is a behavior that you're manifesting, but it's actually not inside of you. It's not within your control, and it's not inside of you. And that's the first step of the distillation. Sorry, you were saying something.
yes. So, my question to you is that while this is sounding right and intuitively, absolutely the thing that happens to lots of people, but isn't it easier said and done to basically be able to arrest that emotion of anger or hurt and then move to another level? And what are your tips to people to actually work on yourself such that you are able to deal with this stage?
Excellent. And that's what I was coming to next. How does this get manifested? So, anger, fear, panic, etc., are all emotions. And you're right, it's much easier said than done, because in that moment of anger or fear or panic, it's very difficult to isolate or identify it. So, to avoid reaching there is the second part of the journey, which is how does this manifest? How do you identify these behaviors? How do you even become aware and conscious of them? And that's the concept that the Bhagavad Gita calls the concept of the karma, right? I'll take a very simple example, right? So if you're in a pool, Nandini, and there's a ball at the other end of the swimming pool and you have to get to it, how will you get to it? Right? So if you chase it with all your might and effort and swim desperately towards it, guess what? The ball's only going to go further away. So if you really want the ball, you will actually swim to it with a calm, deliberate movement, and actually at some distance from the ball, pause, stop, wait for it to come to you. This idea in our daily life is about living in the here and the now.
Hmm.
The whole idea of karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. You know, so which is don't chase that distant dream, the ball there. but living in the here and the now. Very often, and when we are operating from that circle of control, of concern, not control, we hook ourselves, we hinge ourselves because we are unhinged from within, the center of gravity, basic physics again. So you hinge yourself on these outside suppositions. The supposition of how the world should be. I must be a good mother. A good mother must ensure that children are disciplined and brush their teeth at night. A good leader must appear assertive and all knowledgeable. A good wife must ensure that her husband eats food well and must wait for him to eat food before she eats, etc., etc. So every time that you find yourself using the word supposed to, should, must, right, wrong, good, bad, ऐसा ही होता है, this is what the world is, this is how it is supposed to be, you need to pause. And that's much easier done than recognizing your emotion.
This brings me naturally to the third question, which is that once I have identified my shoulds and my should be's and musts and must nots, what is it that I can do to actually move beyond that?
So, and the third one's actually very, very interesting because it sounds so simple and yet is possibly the most difficult to practice. In fact, identifying the words we use is much easier than what I'm going to tell you next. Um, Nandini, and you know it better than the others. You've studied the neuroscience of the brain and how the brain works, and you know about neuroplasticity. So while we study it in ion partnership and at our current context, we will talk about neurosciences. But the Brihadaranya Upanishad actually articulated it brilliantly. It said, Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, which is basically you don't take away darkness, you just replace with light. You don't sit there saying, I'm going to take away darkness. You just introduce light. Or I'm not going to lie. You don't not lie, you just tell the truth. And while instinctively it sounds simple, what that allows for your brain to do is start creating alternate neural pathways to, because the habitual pathology of, which is hinged into should, must, supposed to be, and which consequently then leads to anger, to being upset, to being in denial, to being in conflict, starts with that simple practice of using a negative word.
True.
So to break that, you actually have to create alternate neural pathways. And it's something that we do in anger very simply, right? When we're dealing with anger management, you don't tell somebody, don't get angry. Don't get angry, huh? Don't get angry. You can't get angry. You simply tell them to snap that and start creating an alternate pathway. So breathe deeply, count from 1 to 10, take a sip of water, because that affirmative action snaps the habitual pathology of anger, of fear, of panic, right? So the simplest thing to do is not use negative words. Every time that you use a negative word, whether it's no, not, cannot, shouldn't, must, couldn't, nahi, don't do this, cannot do this, and we have a whole vocabulary of these. But every time that you use a negative word, you block your conversation with yourself. The simplest thing to do is don't use negative words. Your child coming to you and saying, Mom, can I have ice cream? As the mother, you're most tempted to say, no, you cannot. But the moment you can't use a negative word, you create alternatives. Are you hungry? Are you bored? And you begin that conversation with your child and therefore with your own self. About why can't the child have an ice cream? What's wrong with it? Are you worried about health? In which case, do you want them to have apples, etc.? Right. So, and I'll give you a very small example from my motherhood. So I used to be one of those people who used to really hold on to the notion of motherhood. And I think most of us do because it's our most intimate relationship, right? The most intimate expression of creation itself. And there was this whole thing that, till I was in that mind space that a good mother must ensure that their child brushes their teeth at night. Every night was a battle. I would scream, shout, rant, rave, be the banshee, go brush your teeth will. Till the epiphany happened of saying, I mean, why? just because a good mother must do it, versus the person I am. So the person I'm trying to be, the responsibility I'm trying to occupy, versus the person I really am. Because in the person that I really am, I walk up to my daughters and say, look, if you don't brush your teeth at night at 9 p.m., my teeth aren't getting spoiled. I will not get cavities. I'm not going to the dentist. You are. Or if you don't do your homework on time, I am not getting screamed. I will not be left illiterate. Your problem. Your teachers will scream at you. Till I actually had that 7-year-old who's now 15 telling me, but I'm a child. I said, yeah, so no, it is your job as a mother to make sure I brush my teeth and do my homework. No. I said, if you have that much of sense, why don't you just do your homework instead of fighting the battle? And it makes life much easier. Because I have now let go of the notion of the mother I must be to embrace the person I am. And that then allows me to dance crazily on nuclear, to laugh my head off, to just sit there and nap off in the middle of the afternoon because I am not putting myself under pressure.
True, true. And thank you very much, Eka, for these, really important, perhaps not so often discussed, but
Mm.
very essential for, personal development. These tips are going to go a long way, and hopefully some Zen mothers are going to come out of this conversation.
Zen wives, imagine Zen wives, Zen professionals, Zen people. And
Yes,
they're really simple, Pada and Nandini. I've always found that we complicate constructs, processes, thoughts, emotions, because if it's simple, then we would be forced to do something about it. If it's complicated, then it's not my responsibility. Then I can abdicate to say too difficult. It's getting there. It's complicated, but really it isn't.
yeah, and it's, I mean, since you mentioned applied neuroscience, it's also a habitual thought pattern
Yeah.
which gets embedded in our brains because we've been playing them over and over again since we learned them or we absorbed them many, 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 many moons ago. So there is a course correction that needs to be done at a certain age, and we are talking about that. But thank you so much for this, and I hope to have more conversations with you in the future.
Always a pleasure, Nandini. Really, thank you so much for having me over. And best of luck to you. I look forward to this.